Welcome to the live stream of the SpaceX launch of Axiom-1. And this is a really exciting mission because this is going to be the first private crew to go to the International Space Station. It's not the first private people to go to the space station. There have been some that have gone up on the Soyuz capsule, of course. But this is going to be a complete crew, which is entirely private. So there's no, NASA's not paying for this. Russia's not paying for this. There's no space agency that's paying for this. These are just private citizens who are going to space. And I think this is a really exciting marker for the future industry because that's really what we want for space. We want space to be a place where anyone can go. You don't have to have a special credential and you don't need to be specially selected. You can just be someone who maybe works in space or really wants to go, and maybe you want to have a tourist activity in space or something like that. That's what Axiom Space is focusing on, and that's kind of been their vision, and this is the start of that vision. So it's really exciting to see this unfold, and I hope that your enthusiasm is as high as mine. So yeah, let's get into a little bit about what Axiom Space is. I know I mentioned that they're trying to expand humans' presence in space, but they have a really bold vision for what's happening in the coming years. So let's get into it a little bit. First, just so we don't fall back on the timeline, we're about 15 minutes away from launch. So the Falcon 9 is sitting on the launch pad. The four soon-to-be astronauts are sitting in the capsule and ready to start their journey to the International Space Station. But we'll get back to them in a second. I just want to kind of go over some of the cool things that are happening with Axiom Space before we switch to the live stream. So one thing that's really cool about what Axiom Space is doing is that they want to build basically a private space station. And of course, if they do this, this will be the first private space station. All space stations previously have been publicly funded, either by agencies like NASA or Roscosmos or the Chinese Space Agency. So they want to build a private space station that will be kind of for whatever private citizens want to do in orbit. That could be doing manufacturing in space, doing special activities in space, but it could also be for tourist activities as well. And so they have this whole plan over the next couple of years where they're going to be building these modules that are going to attach to the International Space Station. And they have 3 missions planned for that, where they're going to attach 3 modules successively to the International Space Station, and those are represented by the first 3 images that we have here on this diagram. And then as soon as they have their 4th module that goes up with the solar panels and the radiators, then it'll be able to separate from the International Space Station and be its own functioning space station. And that's scheduled to come in around 2027. So that's only 5 years away. It's a really ambitious schedule. Another cool thing about this space station is they have this glass dome underneath. So you can clearly see that they're gearing this towards kind of a touristy kind of style of doing things. Obviously, having something like this is something that would appeal to tourists. And here you can see an example of what that looks like. So yeah, just looking at the Earth from this vantage point would truly be spectacular, and definitely way and beyond anything that the International Space Station has on board it. They do have a viewing cupola that's is kind of for this function, but it doesn't have the window space like it can be seen here. So yeah, definitely would maybe start becoming worth the money to get to the space station if you could just enjoy this absolutely fantastic view that you would get from this viewing cupola. So that's a little bit about Axiom Space. Now let's talk a little bit about who's going to space. So who are these people that are getting to be the first private crew to go to the International Space Station? Well, first up, we have the commander of the mission, who's going to be Michael Lopez Alegria. And you'll hear him referred to in the live cast as MLA, because this was his name that he had back in his NASA days. He used to, of course, be an astronaut for NASA. He's retired now, so he's officially a private citizen. But the reason why he's the commander of this mission is because he has his previous experience as a NASA astronaut. And he's a very decorated NASA astronaut. He's gone up on, I think, 4 or 5 space launch missions. Sorry, on 4 or 5 space shuttle missions. So he goes way back. And he has some records for being the longest, at the time he was the longest staying astronaut in space, and he also had some records for the longest spacewalks or the most spacewalks. I forget which one it is. He's got a bunch of spacewalks. So he's a very decorated, very experienced commander, and definitely a good start to having a private presence in space. Backing him up is going to be Larry Connor, and he's going to be the pilot for the mission. I know the SpaceX Dragon capsule doesn't really have much piloting that you need to actually physically do. It mostly autonomously does everything. But, in case anything goes wrong, he is trained to handle these things. And of course, these guys that are private citizens are not trained as NASA astronauts, but they still go through a rigorous training program that goes for months, like I think 6 months or something. So they are quite familiar with all the Dragon systems and all the ways to operate the vehicle and stuff. He's also the oldest person on board. He's 72 years old, and he is a businessman so he's made lots of money in business, and that's why he's able to join the mission. But he's also very focused on outreach as well. So he has a foundation that's that focuses on helping the some children on education and I think with medicine and stuff. So he has a public outreach as well, and that's kind of the combination that seems to be a part of this mission a lot, is people that are I guess rich because they have to be able to afford to go. Now it's still expensive, right? But also people who want to reach out to the community and increase the net utility of the world, so to say. That seems to be a common theme. Up next, we have Eitan Stiba, and I feel like I'm mispronouncing that, so I apologize. He's an Israeli guy, and he actually has an experience as a fighter pilot with the Israeli Defense Force. So he also is quite experienced in terms of flight, not space flight, but flight in general. He's also a businessman, and he also has philanthropic interests. Man, I can't say that word very well. And he's going to be a mission specialist on this mission. And then finally, my favorite, for obvious reasons, as he is Canadian, I'm also Canadian, in case you didn't know, is Mark Pathey. And he is going to be also a mission specialist on this mission. And like the rest of them, he's also a business person, and he does a lot of public outreach. He's also going to be the youngest person on this crew, so maybe the most vibrant of the bunch. A little bit about myself. I'm Josiah, and I am a space engineer, and I'm going to the University of Bremen. And I'm part of a group called Astra Bremen, and we are focused on building a rocket which can go to the Kármán line. So obviously, we are really interested to see what the professionals are doing, and hopefully we can get a little bit of inspiration from these missions. So looking forward to seeing the live cast. Let's switch to them right now. So right now we are about 8 minutes away from launch.
All of the folks in mission control, and of course our training teams. With NASA, boy, it's been tough. The first time was always hard, and there's no playbook. It's all open field running, but with ISS program, commercial LEO development, and flight operations, we've learned a lot, and we'll continue to do so. We want to thank Cam and Seth for their vision, but especially all the people at Ax-1 for putting this mission together with the minor miracles that they perform. All of you, make no mistake, are the men and the women in the arena. Your faces are marred, if metaphorically, by the dust, sweat, and blood, and you strive valiantly. You will have no place with the cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. The crew of the great ship Endeavour is ready to sail her proudly, Arthur.
So that's the sign-off of the crew before their launch into space, which was quite poetic, I must say.
Some heartfelt words there.
Stage 1 engine chill has started.
All right, so there was the call that we have begun to chill the engines on the first stage. So what we're doing right now is flowing a little bit of the super chilled liquid oxygen through the turbo pumps on those M1D engines. There's 9 of them at the base of the first stage. And that's essentially bringing them down to the temperature of that super chilled liquid oxygen to prevent any thermal shock to the hardware. Just before that call, some really heartfelt words from Commander MLA and Mission Specialist Eitan Stiba. Really love.
So let's talk a little bit about the vehicle. So obviously the Falcon 9 is a special vehicle. It has a lot of special features that allow it to be competitive in its space and also to be a really useful launch vehicle in the market today. Obviously the biggest selling point of the Falcon 9 is that it's reusable. So here is a little bit of a diagram that shows the path that the Falcon 9 will take on its way to the International Space Station. So here you can see we're going to go through, as soon at T-0, the vehicle is going to launch. Then the vehicle is going to go through max Q at about T plus 50 seconds. And then it's going to separate from the second stage, which is attached to the Dragon capsule, at about 2.5 minutes. And of course, the first stage, the big part on the bottom, the booster, is going to flip around, and then it's going to go through a series of burns to land itself back on a drone ship that's floating right now in the Atlantic Ocean. And at the same time, the second stage will continue on to orbit with the Dragon spacecraft on board. And the Dragon spacecraft that's on board right now is the Endeavour spacecraft, which is actually the first one that went to space with people. If you remember back a couple years ago when Bob and Doug went to space, it was the first return to space of American astronauts since the retirement of the space shuttle. So this is a kind of a special capsule. It's really a part of all the firsts, so to speak. It's like the record-breaking capsule, you know?
Strongback is retracting. Actually, that's the start of about a 1-minute sequence. In about T-4 minutes, the clamp arms that you can see there will open, and then we will see the retract from there. So we've heard the call out. That's the start of the sequence. Doesn't mean that the clamp arms are late opening. Will take us a few more seconds.
And this is going to be the 5th flight for the booster stage of the rocket. And I don't know, if they zoom out again, you'll see that the first stage is kind of like black. And that's not the actual color of the aluminum that the vehicle's made out of. It's just because it's been reflown so many times that when the stage flies through its exhaust plume, when it's doing the re-entry burns, it gets soot on it from the exhaust. So this is just something that happens when you reuse the vehicle. But yeah, it's supposed to be white, and you'll notice that it's kind of black.
Hangar, from the hangar to the launch pad. And there you can see that strong back retraction has begun.
So you'll see that the big tower that holds the vehicle is now retracting.
To look nominal, as we're now under 3.5 minutes until launch. RP1 fuel is fully loaded on first and second stage. Should be wrapping up LOX load on the first stage momentarily and continuing to fill on second stage.
Stage 1, LOX load is complete.
All right. Liquid oxygen is in, which means that the vehicle is finished fueling.
We're under 3 minutes until liftoff of the Ax-1 mission.
Dragon is in terminal count and is on internal power.
All right, there we heard that Dragon is on internal power. As I was saying, we're getting close. The crowds are growing. The excitement is palpable. You can see there on the left-hand side of your screen, Mission Control here in Hawthorne, California, just behind where John and I are. And then on the right-hand side, that looks like Axiom Mission Control.
That looks like Axiom Mission Control in Houston, Texas. Everybody's waving and saying, hey.
All right, at this point in time, that LOX load on first stage is complete. So the first stage is now fully loaded with all of its propellant. LOX load on second stage continues.
Okay, you can't quite see the blackness of the first stage, but this is just because of the ice that builds up on the rocket because of the liquid oxygen. The liquid oxygen gets loaded at minus 180 degrees Celsius, so it's like really cold, And when the walls of the tank are that cold, they basically condense all the water out of the air, and then you get this ice on the side of the booster. So I guess it's kind of like a rocket wash. I wonder if it actually causes it to be less sooty in the end.
The second stage generates a typical large white cloud of condensation around the strong bag. Big event coming up now, T-minus 1 minute, all the flight computers take over. Let's listen in to the last minute of terminal count.
FTS is armed, Falcon 9 is in startup, and now controlling.
Dragon is in countdown.
So the capsule is completely autonomous now. Any
Dragon
stop to the
SpaceX.
count.
Go for launch.
SpaceX Endeavor, we acknowledge. Go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds.
So that final go for launch was from the weather. So weather is good.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Here we go.
Stop. Go Falcon. Go Dragon. Godspeed. Ax-1.
The first private mission to the International Space Station.
Copy 1 Alpha. New fuel station downrange.
Together, a new chapter begins. Godspeed, Ax-1.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
SpaceX has the best tracking cam footage. I don't know how, but
T plus 38 seconds into this historic mission, flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9.
Power range telemetry nominal.
so the
Stage 1
vehicle's
throttle down.
going to go through max
Throttling
Q here
down
pretty
in the
quick.
Preparation for max dynamic pressure.
Maximum dynamic pressure is just when the vehicle has the most aerodynamic stress on it.
XQ. Stage 1 throttle up.
Merlin 1D engines coming back up to power.
One Bravo.
The Falcon 9 will actually lower the amount of thrust it has through max Q just to protect the system.
Was a Dragon flight computer wet profile to fly using the Super Draco engines, but everything is looking good on Falcon 9. We're getting nominal callouts from all the engineers and a great view from the ground camera and the onboard cameras.
Invac chill underway.
Beginning to chill in the second stage turbo pump in preparation for its ignition coming up in just over half a minute from now. Coming up on about 3.5 G's acceleration for the crew. We'll begin throttling down the Merlin engines to hold that level of acceleration.
All right, we're coming up on the separation
Coming
now.
up, we're going to get main engine cut off of
Stage
the
1
nine
throttle down.
engines. Get stage separation and ignition of the second stage engine. You've heard the throttle down call out. We're holding 3.5 G's for the crew.
And Miko. Stage separation confirmed.
So that's a clean separation.
Copy 2 Alpha. Invac ignition.
It's always cool to see the engine ignition from the first
Successful
stage that's
stage
flying away.
separation ignition of the second stage engine on the left. The titanium grid fins beginning to slowly deploy. Great views from the first stage camera. The first stage now begins a slow flip maneuver. You can see the white nitrogen gas plumes as we reorient for an entry back through the Earth's atmosphere a little bit later in the plus count.
So those grid fins are designed to help the first stage to steer its way back to the drone ship, and they kind of act like fins, but they work better through transonic regimes, which is kind of important because the booster is going so fast when it comes back down to land on the drone ship. So it turns out that these waffle fins are actually better than just using like regular fins that you would see like on a rocket or something.
What we like to hear.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
AOS Bermuda, acquisition of signal. The Bermuda tracking station now getting telemetry from the second stage of the Falcon 9 with the Dragon on top. T plus 4 minutes, 10 seconds. Everything continues to be nominal. First stage coasting to apogee, and then it will come back down for landing on the drone ship. Second stage, partway through its lengthy burn to get the crew into orbit.
I was kind of hoping they'd
4.5 minutes in, everything continues to look good.
I was kind of hoping they'd show more shots of the crew. Oh, here we go. This is nice.
We've got a live view of the crew inside Dragon Endeavour. Looks like everyone is still pretty comfy. As John had said earlier, we got
Dragon,
to
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
all right, good call out there that trajectory is nominal.
Never we copy.
As John mentioned, we got to about 3.5 Gs there.
Acquisition of signal, New Hampshire.
On the left-hand side of your screen, we can see the first stage as it is making its way back down to Earth. It's targeting a landing on our drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas, which is parked a couple hundred miles off the coast of Florida out in the Atlantic Ocean.
An interesting thing about the seats is that they're actually custom built. So they have like special sizes for each of the astronauts, or each of the astronauts that fly on the vehicle. So maybe that's part of why they look so comfortable. Also, they didn't show them while they were going through the 3.5 Gs of acceleration, so they might have been a little less comfortable during that. When the second stage ignites, it's not quite as much G-force at the start, but it starts to pick up in the end. So maybe they'll show them again when the higher G-forces are there again.
All right, so coming up in about a minute and a half, the first stage will execute the first of 2 burns required for today's landing attempt. At about T plus 7 minutes and 30 seconds, we'll see the entry burn begin. That's where the first stage will ignite the center engine first, and then a couple seconds later ignite 2 more engines, so a total of 3 engine burn, which will last about 29 seconds. The entry burn slows the vehicle down significantly as it re-enters back into the Earth's atmosphere. The first stage sees high drag, which scrubs roughly 70% of that velocity by the time that the landing burn begins. Stunning view where you can see the curvature of the Earth there on the left-hand side.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
So everything seems to be going pretty well here. Looking forward to the start of this entry burn.
There are 4 of them placed around the booster, and those grid fins also help steer for a precise landing, either at
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
You can see the grid fins starting to move now as the air gets thicker.
All right, there we can see that entry burn has begun. We are targeting a landing on our drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas today. Everything continuing to look nominal with trajectory and MVAC performance there for our second stage on the right-hand side.
So the second stage is going to stop before the landing happens, so just keep that in mind
So
as
we
we
are
go here.
conducting the entry burn. Previously, the booster
Stage
was
1 entry burn shut down.
that entry burn helps slow the booster down. It was going about 25 times the speed of sound. So we slow it down as it re-enters the dense part of the Earth's atmosphere. The The next event is second engine cutoff, or SECO 1, as you see it there on the timeline at the bottom of your screen.
Stage 2 and terminal guidance.
That's where we shut down the MVAC engine, or second engine cutoff.
Looks like a bit of a bouncy ride on that booster on the way down right now. It was a bit unusually rough compared to previous ones. But it's nice that we got to see it all the way through the transonic regime, because usually we lose some of the data.
All right, we got a live view of the crew inside Dragon Endeavour
So
there on the
the second
right-hand
engine
side of
just
your
shut
screen.
down, so they're in orbit. And wow, we're really getting full coverage here.
First stage.
SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
All right, great news there. Dragon Endeavour, nominal orbit insertion.
SpaceX
Oh, wow.
Endeavour, we copy, and it's great to be here. 0G, and we feel fine.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. SpaceX Dragon.
What a fantastic landing sequence.
As you can see,
Just
this
full
Falcon
coverage
9
all the way
has
down,
landed
and on a
for the
drone
fifth
ship too,
time.
which like never happens. They must have fixed something, because that never happens.
While we can confirm the landing, confirmed landing there of the first stage.
Also, one interesting thing about that landing, what you saw, like you noticed that the ship kind of came in and the drone ship was like to the left, and then the booster kind of, dog-legged over, and that's part of the sequence of how the first stage lands.
That was one of mine. That
But
was
yeah,
one
we
of the
can
things
see
I really
here.
wanted to see what they were going to bring for their 0G indicator, so I can't wait to see what comes on.
Looks, I can't quite tell, Pokemon?
You can see here that they're in space.
Yeah,
But
and if not, we'll get to ask them later, hopefully.
yeah,
There
great
should
to
be a
see the
0G
crew
indicator
here
somewhere.
again, starting to really getting their first taste
Yeah.
of microgravity.
Yeah.
Oh, it has ears. Oh, it's a bunny.
Oh,
Is
looks
that
like-
Thumper?
Oh, there it is.
I think it might be.
I think that's Thumper from Bambi. Love it. So right now, the second stage is basically preparing for Dragon separation. The next step now that, as we said, Dragon has nominal orbital insertion, the second stage and Dragon will separate. Views there of our MVAC engine now shut off, no longer glowing that lovely shade of orange.
So the second stage is going to separate from the Dragon capsule, and that's just because the second stage is going to deorbit itself and crash back in the ocean. Of course, the Dragon capsule should continue on to the International Space Station. So
Preparing now for stage separation, or excuse me, for Dragon separation.
and Dragon has its own propulsion package that can move it around and
For those
get
of
it to
you
the
that
International Space
have just
Station.
recently joined us, we had an on-time liftoff of the Axiom-1 crew. They are now in space and coming up to separation from second stage, at which point they will then begin to make their journey, continue their journey to the International Space Station. The view that you're currently looking at is inside the Dragon trunk, which, as you can see, has just separated from the second stage.
And that's the completion of Falcon 9's mission. And you can see there the trunk. There's nothing inside right now.
Falcon 9 team, welcome to space. Thanks for flying Falcon 9. You guys enjoy your trip to that wonderful space station in the sky. Do some great research for us. We'll look to see you back here underground. Now stand by for some words from LD.
And MLA and the rest of the crew Endeavor, glad we got to have some fun this morning. We'll probably be calling an early weekend over here at the Cape. Pass you over to Anna and the team. You'll be in good hands. Godspeed, Endeavor. Enjoy the rest of your flight. Cheers.
It's kind of like an airplane and air traffic control.
We thank you and your launch team, Girth, you and the Falcon 9 team. That was a hell of a ride, and we're looking forward to the next 10 days.
So
All right, some nice words there from a couple of key folks.
Just to give you an idea of the upcoming sequences here, they're going to have the nose cone of the Dragon deploy, and then the vehicle will be traveling to the International Space Station for the next 20 hours.
Bermuda and New Hampshire.
There we can see Dragon Endeavour on its way to the International Space Station. It has separated. There's a view
Dragon
inside.
SpaceX, we had nominal dehumidifier activation, service section Draco checkouts.
This is a nice camera. They got all these like high-tech view screens in there.
We can see over the shoulder of
SpaceX Endeavour, we copy, right there.
over the shoulder. Previously, Commander MLA was on the left, and pilot Larry Connor was on the right. Live view inside the cabin. They just got the okay to lift their visors.
All right.
It's definitely a lot cleaner in there than like a Soyuz. I don't know if you've seen the inside of a Soyuz capsule, but there's like knobs and buttons everywhere. And I don't think there's a single button in this entire ship. Everything's all touchscreen.
Floating around, great view there of Dragon Endeavour. Now in space with the Axiom-1 crew on their way to the International Space Station.
Yeah, I mean, this is a day of firsts. You know, this is my first time getting to participate in a launch like this. This is the first for Axiom. I mean, this is a first for spaceflight. And it's just wonderful to see such a picture of perfect launch.
It really was.
We saw the landing and we saw orbital or zero-G insertion at the same time. I mean, that was perfect.
Yeah.
It was wonderful to see. All right, well, as I just said, today's launch is one for the history books. So to punctuate this milestone that NASA and commercial companies are able to achieve together, we go now to Kennedy Space Center, where Megan Cruz is with NASA's Kathy Leaders.
I am. I'm here right now with the Associate Administrator of NASA's Space Operations Mission Director. It's so great to have you here, Kathy. What did you think of the launch?
Oh my gosh, it's always like, you know, right in the bottom of my throat. I'm holding, I can't breathe.
Yes.
But what a beautiful, beautiful sight.
Yeah.
So good to see it. I want to tell everybody working.
All right. So there's not really much that's going to happen next with the traveling to the International Space Station. Obviously, it's a slow journey to get there, so we're not going to live stream the whole 20 hours. That would be a bit much. But one question that's interesting is, well, why does it take 20 hours? I mean, like, if you know a little bit about orbital mechanics, you know that one orbit takes about 90 minutes, where the International Space Station is, and well, if you're launching to the International Space Station, maybe you do an orbit or two and then you dock. But this is not really the way that the Dragon is designed to do it. Usually, you don't want to just immediately go and dock with the International Space Station like within one orbit. So you just like line up your launch trajectory so it meets exactly with the International Space Station at exactly the right time. Theoretically, you could, dock, in 20 minutes or whatever. And maybe if you've played Kerbal Space Program, you've, figured out how to do that and have it like an immediate docking and, it's all done. But in reality, you kind of want to do some checks and make sure that you're going to be docking a safe capsule with the station, because obviously the station is this big, huge piece of technology, and you don't want to have potentially dangerous spacecraft coming near to it if everything is not checking out. So let's say there was like a faulty valve or something on the Dragon capsule. You wouldn't want to like accidentally have this valve fire and then it would be thrust towards something and then it hits the solar panel or something. Yeah, this is not what you want to have. So for this reason, they usually will put the Dragon capsule near to the International Space Station and just have it slowly approach it over those 20 hours. There are different sequences that the spacecraft can use. So for instance, the Soyuz capsule actually does this crazy, like it can do it in like 4 hours. So it does like 2 orbits and then it docks. So it just kind of compresses that, all those activities and does it as quickly as you possibly can and still stay safe. But Dragon capsule obviously takes it a little bit more conservatively. So yeah. A bit of a long ride if you're one of those astronauts, sitting in the capsule for 20 hours is definitely a long time. Although we have to keep in mind that there was a mission last year, I believe, where they had a private mission that went up in a Dragon capsule. They didn't dock with the International Space Station, but they just lived in the capsule for, I think, like 3 days or something. So you can stay in there for quite a while. It's not like that bad, but definitely not a lot of room in there. And they had some issues with that. If you read up on the problems that they were having, in the end they had some issues with the space toilet as well, which is an interesting problem to have. Anyways, yeah, the summary is that we have a successful launch of the Axiom-1 mission. The Endeavour space capsule is now in orbit and is headed to the International Space Station. And we had the successful recovery of the booster, which is the fifth time it's flown and the fifth time it's been recovered. And it'll most certainly be back on the launch stand for the sixth try coming up in the future. So yeah, thanks for tuning in to the live cast of this mission. And we hope to see you in the future. And remember to keep expanding your horizons.